Imagine being told you have to pack your bags, leave all your friends behind, and just completely move to a new location every 3 years.
Right.
And this is entirely by design, right? Just so you don't get too emotionally attached to your neighbor.
It sounds wild. I know.
It really does. Anyway, welcome to today's deep dive, where we are exploring a text that demands exactly that kind of radical detachment. We're constantly surrounded by these blueprints for, like, fixing human misery.
Oh, absolutely.
It's funny because the search for a perfect society is, well, it's a lot like the search for the perfect diet.
That is a surprisingly good comparison.
Right, because everyone has a theory. You've got people pushing low carb or intermittent fasting, keto, whatever, and every single one of them promises that if you just follow their specific rigid set of rules, you'll finally be, happy and healthy and completely free of suffering.
Until day 3,
Yeah.
usually.
Exactly. By day 3, you're sitting in your car eating a donut, and your personal utopia just completely falls apart. And, I mean, most of these societal blueprints remain just that, right? Just theories.
Yeah, beautiful theories that look incredible on paper.
Right, but they collapse the absolute second they meet messy, real-world human behavior.
Well, because the friction of human nature is just incredibly difficult to engineer away. I mean, we were biologically and honestly psychologically wired for deep attachment.
Yeah.
We're wired for self-interest, for resource hoarding, and inevitably, for conflict.
Sure.
So building a system that claims to completely bypass all of those deeply ingrained evolutionary traits is, well, historically it's nearly impossible.
Right.
Most utopian experiments, they fracture from within after just a few years because they fail to account for the complexities of the human ego.
Which is exactly what makes the material we are unpacking today so incredibly fascinating. So you listening at home, we're looking at a document from June 2024.
Yeah, quite recent.
Yeah, very recent. It's titled The Truth About Utopia, and it's written by an author named Feng. It essentially outlines the foundational philosophy of a community known as Lifechanyuan.
And specifically their physical living model, which they call the second home.
Right, the second home. And the text claims this isn't just some thought experiment or like a weekend yoga retreat.
No, not at all.
This is a model that has supposedly survived and functioned for over 16 years.
Which is a huge claim. And our mission for you today is to impartially unpack the blueprint provided in this text. We are not here to endorse this community as a true paradise.
Definitely not.
And we aren't here to condemn it as some restrictive experiment either. We really just want to understand the architecture of the author's claims.
Because the scale of those claims is truly staggering, isn't it?
It is. Feng states point blank that the Lifechanyuan utopian model can, quote, completely resolve and eradicate various social maladies and every individual's worries, pains, and misfortunes.
Completely eradicate. Not manage, not temporarily reduce through therapy or public policy.
No, completely eradicate every individual's worries.
It's just a massive promise. And to understand how someone even attempts to build a society that promises zero pain and zero worry, we really have to look at the foundation.
Right.
And I was completely caught off guard by the very first building block here. Because the starting premise for this entire physical commune isn't political theory.
No, it's not.
It isn't a new economic model. It's actually science, or, well, specifically a very literal philosophical interpretation of quantum mechanics.
Yeah, the scientific justification for Lifechanyuan begins precisely there. The text argues that quantum mechanics proves that the physical world before our eyes is the direct, tangible result of our observation.
Wait, so?
To use the text's stricter definition, they say the reality we experience is nothing more than a manifestation of our consciousness.
Wait, so they are essentially using quantum physics to justify the structural design of a social commune.
That is exactly what they're doing.
That is wild. It is like saying life is a virtual reality headset, and your internal consciousness is the software.
I like that analogy.
Right. So if you write clean code, if you completely reprogram the underlying operating system of your mind, the headset generates a completely bug-free utopia.
Precisely. You don't fix the broken world by just moving the physical, digital furniture around, so to speak.
Yeah, you have to fix the underlying code.
Exactly. And Feng writes that having created Lifechanyuan for over 20 years now, the truth of this theory has been deeply experienced by the community.
Wow.
The mechanism basically works like this. Whatever state your consciousness is in, reality simply acts as a mirror. It presents you with external results that perfectly match your internal state.
So if the collective consciousness is fractured, selfish, anxious and competitive.
Then your resulting society will inevitably be fractured, selfish, anxious, and competitive.
That actually makes a weird kind of sense.
The argument is that you cannot legislate your way out of misery. You have to change the consciousness first, and only then will the physical reality fundamentally transform.
And they took this philosophy and literally poured concrete over it. I mean, the text states that in April 2009, they launched the physical second home model.
Yeah, as a direct, tangible manifestation of this new unified consciousness.
And Suifeng describes this resulting society as Suifeng-style communism and the kingdom of the greatest creator.
It is entirely presented as a practical application of a spiritual theory. And the text provides some very hard claims about its endurance, too.
Right. 16 years is a long time for a commune.
It is. It explicitly states this second home model has survived more than 10 heavy blows over its 16-year existence.
Added heavy blows.
Yeah, meaning it hasn't collapsed under the weight of human nature or external pressure. In fact, Sofen's claims it is currently operating successfully in multiple countries.
Wait, multiple countries?
Yeah, the text specifically lists branches in Thailand, Canada, and South Korea.
Okay, so this brings us to the logistics. If this group claims to have successfully reprogrammed their reality, what does the actual day-to-day physical life in this second home look like?
That's the big question.
Like, if I walk into one of these communities in Thailand tomorrow, what are the rules of the game? Let's talk about the economy first.
Okay.
Because the way they structure resources completely deconstructs almost everything we consider normal about modern survival.
It really does. The entire economic structure rests on the absolute elimination of private property.
Zero private property.
Zero. According to the text, all resources are shared collectively. No one owns any land, any food, any tools, or any resources at all.
Wow.
Everyone is expected to be a worker, too. The text specifically notes there is no such thing as someone who simply consumes without participating in labor.
But wait, how do they assign work then?
Well, work isn't assigned by some rigid top-down bureaucracy. It is chosen based on personal conditions, individual nature, and the immediate needs of the home.
Which naturally leads to the question of compensation, right? I mean, without private property, how are people rewarded for their labor?
You'd think there'd be a system for that.
Yeah, I imagine if there is no wage, there has to be some sort of strict rationing or distribution system to ensure fairness. Otherwise, it's just chaos.
Surprisingly, the text claims there is no distribution system at all.
Wait, really? None.
None. You do not earn a wage, and nobody is handing out weekly rations based on how many hours you work. You simply take what you need.
Take what you need.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds beautiful in a poetic sense, but mechanically, it sounds incredibly fragile.
Oh, for sure.
Any student of basic economics would point to the tragedy of the commons, right? If everything is free and there are no managers policing the resources, what stops someone from taking all the best food or hoarding supplies just in case?
Right, and the text insists this works because of the complete removal of the traditional family structure.
Here we go.
Yeah, the rule that facilitates this economy is perhaps the most radical in the entire blueprint.
Let's hear it.
It states, quote, no marriage, no family, no kinship.
That is easily the most jarring line in the text.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to push back on this on behalf of anyone listening.
Go for it.
For the vast majority of people, family is their primary source of support. It is the fundamental safety net.
It is.
Taking away marriage and family seems like a recipe for total emotional isolation, not utopian happiness. How does the text possibly justify tearing up the family tree?
Well, the justification is deeply tied to that tragedy of the commons problem you just mentioned.
Okay, how so?
In most modern societies, the nuclear family is the primary economic and emotional unit, right? Wealth accumulation is usually driven by the desire to protect and pass resources to one's children.
That's true. You want your kids to be safe.
Exactly. You hoard money, food, and property because you prioritize your spouse and your offspring over a stranger.
Yeah, of course.
The text argues that the family structure naturally and unavoidably creates an us versus them dynamic.
Oh, I see.
So by dissolving the nuclear family in marriage, the collective steps in to take over those roles completely.
Okay, I see the mechanical logic there. If you don't have a private family to protect, the impulse to hoard resources disappears.
Exactly.
The collective becomes the ultimate comprehensive safety net.
And the text explicitly details this transfer of responsibility. The elderly are fully supported by the collective.
Oh, wow.
Children are raised and educated entirely by the collective. There is absolutely no need to hoard wealth for your retirement or stress about your child's college fund or worry about medical bills.
Because the second home handles it all.
Right. And they claim to achieve this without a traditional hierarchy, too. There are no rulers or managers, only what the text calls concepts and procedures.
Concepts and procedures.
Yeah. No individuals hold power over others. There are just different divisions of labor acting autonomously.
So they're basically trying to engineer an environment where the root causes of negative human emotions like greed, jealousy, financial panic, they just don't have the soil to grow.
That's the idea.
If no one owns anything and no one has a private family to elevate above others, you theoretically eliminate theft and resentment. Everyone is equally responsible for everyone else.
But there is a vital caveat regarding personal autonomy hidden within these rules.
No. What is it?
While no one owns property and you are entirely surrendered to the collective, the text strictly notes that all bedrooms are, quote, sacred and inviolable.
That is such a fascinating specific detail.
Isn't it?
You own absolutely nothing. Not the food you eat, not the land you walk on, not the clothes on your back. But the space where you sleep is entirely sacred.
Yes,
It really suggests they recognize the human need for at least a sliver of psychological sanctuary.
I think so. And alongside that sacred personal space, the text emphasizes a lack of coercion.
You mean what?
There are no performance assessments and no supervisory oversight. Everything is done according to one's own nature and ability. Swefeng paints this really vivid picture of a group of strangers living together like a family, completely without conflict, quarreling or fighting, just laughing and sharing everything happily.
Okay, we have to inject some realism here.
Fair enough.
We are still talking about human beings.
Yeah.
Even if you dissolve the legal contract of marriage, and even if you mandate that the collective raises the kids, people naturally form cliques.
They do.
Wealth accumulation might stem from the family, but social dynamics stem from human chemistry. I mean, think about any workplace, any school, any friend group you have ever been part of.
Right, people gravitate toward certain individuals.
Exactly. They form special bonds, inside jokes, exclusive little circles. How does this utopian model prevent, like, high school-style drama, favoritism, and eventually factions from tearing the community apart from the inside?
Well, the author clearly anticipated that exact behavioral flaw.
I would hope so.
The text outlines a highly specific and frankly extreme mechanical solution to prevent human chemistry from destabilizing the commune.
Okay, what's the solution?
It is a mandatory rotation protocol, which we can call the 3-year rule.
Oh, man. When I read this part of the blueprint, my jaw actually dropped.
It's intense.
It states that within 3 years, personnel must rotate and move to entirely new locations.
A mandatory systemic relocation. You are not permitted to stay in one place, living with one specific group of people for more than 3 years.
It is essentially a self-imposed witness protection relocation program.
That's one way to look at it.
You are forced to pack up your life every 36 months, just so you don't get too cozy with your neighbors. The very concept of a home implies roots.
Sure.
Does the text actually explain why a place called the second home requires you to constantly sever your geographic and social roots?
The text is entirely unapologetic about the reasoning. It explicitly states this rule exists to actively prevent people from forming special emotional, interest, and factional relationships. Yeah, the Chinese term used in the original philosophy translates closely to factional, crony, or clique relationships.
So they're actively structurally disrupting deep, exclusive interpersonal bonds.
By forcing everyone to constantly move across different second home locations, circulating between the branches in Thailand, Canada, and South Korea, the members are forced to remain attached to the collective as a whole.
Right.
And to the overarching ideology, rather than to specific individuals. You cannot form a breakaway faction if your social circle is systematically scrambled every few years.
This reveals the ultimate paradox of this utopia, doesn't it?
How so?
We finally get to the aha moment of the text. It presents this beautiful, idyllic contrast where members live together like a family, laughing and sharing without conflict.
Right.
But behind the scenes, you must actively avoid forming special emotional bonds.
That's the catch.
The underlying philosophy seems to be that deep, exclusive love creates attachment, and attachment creates pain and preference.
Exactly.
Therefore, to eradicate pain, you have to eradicate exclusive love. You have to love everyone equally, which essentially means you aren't really allowed to deeply, fiercely love anyone in particular.
It is a profound psychological trade-off. What is equally fascinating, though, is how the text attempts to balance this intense social engineering with claims of absolute autonomy.
How can you have autonomy in a system like that?
Well, despite the mandatory relocations and the dissolution of the family, the blueprint guarantees two specific freedoms:
Okay.
freedom of communication and freedom to leave.
Really?
Yeah, you are not a prisoner. The text insists you can communicate with whoever you want, and if you ever feel the urge to walk out the door and return to traditional society, you are completely free to do so.
I imagine a place like this can't just have an open door policy at the front gate, though.
Definitely not.
If resources are entirely free and there is no management structure policing the food or the labor, they must have an incredibly intense filtering mechanism before you are even allowed inside.
Oh, they do.
Like, if I decide tomorrow that I'm exhausted by modern anxieties and want to move to a second home in Canada, I can't just buy a plane ticket, knock on the door, and start taking what I need.
No, the price of admission is astronomically high, precisely because the system relies entirely on the ideological purity of its members to function without managers.
So what's the test?
You cannot simply show up and verbally agree to the rules. The text outlines very strict, non-negotiable conditions required to become a member. First and foremost, applicants must go through a minimum of a 6-month spiritual purification process.
6 months of purification.
Yes.
Just to prove your mind is ready to handle the lifestyle without exploiting it. What are the actual prerequisites they are testing for during that half year?
The requirements demand a complete ideological overhaul. You must revere God, life, and nature, strictly following what the text calls the path of nature.
Okay, that sounds fairly standard for a spiritual group.
But crucially, you must adhere to a massive behavioral and philosophical framework called the 800 Values for New Era Human Beings.
800 values.
Yep, 800.
That is not a light reading assignment or a simple list of 10 commandments. What kind of values are we talking about here? Are these practical habits or deep philosophical shifts?
They represent a total rewriting of the human ego. These values focus on redefining success away from individual achievement and toward collective harmony.
Wow.
Furthermore, to pass the purification, you must systematically sever all earthly ties. You must pay off all your external debts. You literally have to own nothing before you cross the threshold.
Oh, nothing. Literally.
Literally, the text explicitly demands that you become unselfish, selfless, and unattached.
That's intense.
Once inside, you must actively participate in creating material, spiritual, or mental wealth for the collective and accumulate merit, living exactly according to the second home's procedures.
The absolute sheer weight of these requirements is astounding. I mean, the text demands that you must be unselfish, selfless, and unattached.
Yes.
Look at the true cost of this paradise. You are promised a life with zero worries, no bosses, no financial panic, where the collective takes care of your children and your old age, and where you just freely take what you need from the communal pot.
Sounds great.
But the entry fee is literally your entire identity. You have to willingly surrender your family, your hometown, your worldly possessions, your debts, and your deep personal attachments. You have to completely empty yourself out to be allowed inside.
And Zhufeng does not hide from the intensity of that demand. In fact, the text frames this as a stark, uncompromising binary choice for the reader.
Really, a binary choice.
Yeah. At the very end of the blueprint, the author boldly challenges the audience directly. The question is simply, can you do it?
Wow.
The claim is absolute. If you can meet these extreme conditions and completely surrender your ego, you will, in the text's words, ascend to heaven in one step.
Ascend to heaven in one step. And what does the author say about those of us who look at this and think, it's just too extreme?
If you cannot do it, the text says you simply remain a common person who continues their current flawed life.
Just a common person.
But there is a distinct warning attached to this dismissal. The author insists that you should not misunderstand or slander this utopia just because you are personally incapable of achieving it.
So if you don't get it, it's your fault.
Exactly. The text claims that if you haven't heard of it or seen it, it is simply because your fortune isn't great enough. If you cannot understand it, it's because your spiritual perception hasn't opened yet.
That's quite a defense mechanism.
The existence of this physical heaven on earth is presented as an indisputable fact. The only variable is whether you possess the spiritual fortitude to enter it.
Ascend to heaven in one step, or remain a common person. I mean, there is an incredible mix of arrogance and absolute confidence in throwing down a gauntlet like that at the end of a manifesto.
There really is.
It really forces you to take a step back and absorb the sheer magnitude of what is being proposed.
It demands reflection. Because whether one views the second home as a genuine functioning paradise, as the author passionately claims, or as a highly controlled, restrictive social experiment, it highlights something deeply resonant.
What's that?
It points directly to a universal human craving. We all share a profound desire to completely eradicate the anxieties, the isolation, the financial terror, and the sheer exhaustion of modern life.
Absolutely.
This blueprint proves that people are willing to consider radically extreme solutions, even surrendering their own families, if the promise of absolute peace is believable.
You know, you listening right now, you might not be packing your bags for a 3-year mandatory rotation in a commune tomorrow.
Probably not.
But this text absolutely forces us to look at the architecture of our own lives. It asks us to consider that quantum reality metaphor again. How much of our own daily stress, our societal dysfunction, and our personal pain is just a product of our relentless attachments and our fractured consciousness?
It's a great question.
Right, if we changed our internal software, how much of our external world would naturally fix itself?
It challenges the very foundation of how we structure our economies and our relationships.
Yeah.
The fundamental argument of the second home is that the friction of human existence is not an inevitable law of nature. It is a design flaw. And it is a flaw that can be methodically coded out of society if you are willing to make the necessary, painful sacrifices.
And what a sacrifice it is. But here is the lingering thought I want to leave you with today, something that builds on everything we've just discussed.
I'm intrigued.
When we look at this utopian blueprint, it's easy to dismiss the idea of severing human ties for the sake of a frictionless system as something only an extreme commune would attempt.
But look closely at the direction of our own modern world.
Okay.
Think about the rise of massive corporate cultures that demand mandatory relocations, open office layouts, and constantly push the narrative that we're a family to replace your actual work-life boundaries.
Oh, that's a really good point. Or think about our algorithmic social media echo chambers, right? Which are designed to seamlessly filter out any dissenting voices, surrounding you only with people who perfectly align with your exact ideology.
Yeah, that's very true.
In a way, aren't we already subtly trying to build our own digital second homes? We are increasingly trading messy, difficult, deeply human relationships for comfortable, frictionless ideological alignment?
We are.
The utopian text promises absolute peace by eliminating the traditional family and deep personal attachments. But the profound question you have to answer for yourself is this: as we continue to chase a perfectly curated, conflict-free existence in our own lives, are we inching closer to the ultimate freedom, or are we slowly engineering away the very friction that makes us human?